Good morning, and thank you for joining BDO's latest webinar today, which is Navigating AI, Copilot and Data Security for Australian Not-for-Profit Organisations. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today, which here in Melbourne, where I am, is the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal people and their ongoing cultures and connections to the land and waters of Australia. We're joining here today on GoToWebinar. So before we begin, I would like to just draw your attention to some housekeeping that's currently being shown on your screen. So everybody is automatically muted, but we will be accepting questions throughout the session. So if you could please submit these using the questions tab, we will try to get to as many questions at the end of the webinar as possible. We've also got some pre-questions that people submitted, so we'll also be going through these and answering these at the end of the webinar. If we can't respond to all of the questions, we will follow up with you after the webinar. Also, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please click the support button, which is the one of the bottoms at the tab on the bottom tabs of your screen. Also, this session is being recorded and all registrants will receive a follow-up email containing the slides and a link to the recording and access to other webinars in this series, as well as all of our contact details. Welcome everybody. I am Elizabeth Blunt and I am the National Not-for-Profit Leader at BDO. I'm also an external audit partner in Melbourne, and if you've watched some previous webinars in the last 12 months, you will have seen me on those also. I'm really excited about today's webinar because we have some external people and national BDO people as well. So first up is Julie Kilner, who is a partner in Brisbane, and she's in our data and AI team. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And so Julie will be setting the regulatory scene in Australia for not-for-profits. We've also got Margot Guidon. Good morning, Margot. So Margot actually works for Microsoft and she is a co-pilot and agent specialist, specialising in not-for-profit organisations in Australia and New Zealand. Hi, Margot.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for having me and discussing such a top-of-mind topic. Can't wait.
Excellent. Thank you. And so Margot will be sharing Microsoft's approach to secure AI adoption using, including sharing Microsoft's strategic perspective and practical experience. And then lastly, welcome to Wayne Anderson. And so Wayne is from Denver, Colorado. Sorry, he's dialing in from today. I have no idea what time it is there, Wayne, but hopefully it's a reasonable hour. So Wayne is from BDO and is BDO's global Microsoft lead and focusing on cloud optimization and cybersecurity. Hi, Wayne. Please share, what time is it in Denver?
Yeah, it's 7 p.m. I'm excited. The AI space is moving so quickly, and so many missions that we're seeing enhanced by deploying these technologies. But it's a crazy space.
Yeah. Excellent. Really, really excited to hear what you have to say. And Wayne will actually be giving a case study for a real life global not-for-profit organisation that he's been working with. And so bringing that story to life on work we've actually completed already. So we'll get straight into it. And I'll hand over to you first, Julie.
Thanks, Elizabeth, and good morning, everyone. Great to be here. So as Elizabeth mentioned, I'll be talking through the emerging data privacy and regulatory expectations that we see impacting NFPs specifically. And over a 20-year career, I've had the great pleasure of working across the not-for-profit sector in things like aged care, community services, education, and really focused on navigating those more complex regulatory and technology challenges. And specifically, I look at data and information from that regulatory and sharing and compliance perspective. So really excited to be able to be here today and talk through something that I'm really passionate about. So first up, look, there's data everywhere, and it's really quite high stakes. So we've really got data everywhere, and the most important thing is we don't often know what we've got, where it is, and what we're supposed to do with it. And in the not-for-profit sector, that challenge is really amplified, in my opinion. So because unlike many commercial organisations, you're not just holding customer data, you're holding people's stories. You're holding health information often, financial hardship, family circumstances, and cultural and community context. So today I want to talk about what's changing in data privacy and AI regulation in Australia, what that means specifically for NFPs, and most importantly, what you should actually do about it. So the current privacy and AI regulatory landscape, let's start with the landscape. There are three major shifts happening right now in Australia. We have Privacy Act reform, which is raising expectations. Australia is really in the middle of significant reforms to the Privacy Act. And certainly with the current government, there were mentions quite a while ago now, admittedly, that there would be a number of tranches of reform, and we've really only seen one of those. So there is expected to be more coming. Key changes that we've seen to date include stronger penalties and enforcement powers, new rights for individuals, including the ability to take action for serious invasions of privacy, and a likely move towards a fair and reasonable test, meaning it's not just about consent anymore. It's about whether your data use is appropriate, and we're certainly seeing that, particularly around things like mandatory notifiable data breach. Increased regulatory focus on data handling practices. So regulators are prioritising over the collection of data, poor retention and disposal practices. So organisations that have not been able to or haven't gone about clearing out the information and data that they no longer need. Weak access controls, and we often see access controls suffering as a result of transformation activity. So having to go back and retrofit access controls can make things quite difficult. And we've seen that across a couple of clients recently in particular. And finally, a lack of transparency. So regulators really are prioritising over, only collect what you need, make sure that you purge, get rid of, or archive the information and data that you no longer need, ensure and check and dare I say audit the access controls that you have in place, and look at that lack of transparency so that you can be as transparent as possible to your customers, clients, and the community. Third, AI is now very firmly in scope. So while Australia doesn't have a single AI Act like Europe, the expectations are clear. AI must be safe, explainable, and fair. Organisations must understand how AI uses data. There is growing alignment with frameworks like responsible AI principles and risk-based AI governance. In short, if you're using AI, you're already expected to govern it. And that governance often extends to things like the model, the outputs that it produces, but then also broadly within the organisation, how you govern that AI, both from a technology and from a people perspective. And people looks at both strategy and then implementation. So what does this mean specifically for NFPs? Well, historically, many NFPs have relied on the small business exemption under the Privacy Act. But in the reality, that exemption is becoming increasingly irrelevant in practice. And that's because many of you already fall into scope now with the Reformed Act, and especially if you handle health or sensitive data. Government contracts often impose privacy obligations regardless of size, and regulators are signalling that exemptions may be reduced or removed over time. But more importantly, community expectations don't recognise exemptions. So your clients, donors, and partners assume that their data is protected, their information is respected, and their privacy is taken seriously. So the shift is this. It's gone from are we regulated to are we acting responsibly? So what regulators are actually looking for, and I am talking about this in a simplified manner. So regulators are not walking in asking, do you have a privacy policy? Although in some of the Office of the Information Commissioner reviews at the minute, we are looking at things like privacy policies. But more broadly, regulators are asking, are you behaving responsibly with people's data? And their focus is very consistent. They're looking for, as I said before, the over collection of data. Are you collecting more than you actually need? Data sitting around forever. So do you have files, emails, documents that no one owns or manages? Do you have caches, for example, of Z archive or stuff folders that have been created during different mergers and transformations? Do you have poor visibility? So do you actually know where your sensitive information is and what that looks like? And are there weak controls? So who can access what and should they? And the key insight is that most issues are not caused by hackers. They're caused by everyday operational behavior like shared drives, email attachments, unstructured data, and just in case data collection. And those sort of things are the things that we really need to be a lot more mindful of and aware of occurring. So core obligations and compliance expectations, we need to simplify what compliance now looks like in practice, and there are 4 core expectations. Collect only what you need. Do we need this now? And move away from, might we need this later? Do we know what we hold and where it is? So have we done our due diligence in e-discovery around where is it stored and who owns it? And I trust that Margot will be looking at that in a minute as well as she delves into a little bit of purview stuff. Managing the full data lifecycle. So data should be collected intentionally, used appropriately, stored securely, and deleted when no longer required. But we also need to protect and control that access. So limit access to those who need it, monitor that usage, and secure systems and platforms. And most importantly, if you use third parties or cloud platforms, you are still accountable. So that third-party review and making sure that contractually you're covered through that third-party relationship is really, really important. I just wanted to finish off with some practical impacts on day-to-day operations, and I think I've gone ahead on my slides, so bear with me. But what do you actually change in your day-to-day work? And that is really looking at the forms, the intake processes, the spreadsheets that you need to review, that you use to collect people's data, and to make sure that we have, again, reduced the amount that we need, but we have the appropriate consent collected at that time of collection. More discipline around that storage, so shared drives and email inboxes, and we see still quite a few instances of attachments being sent in error. So making sure that you've got extra controls over what is sent and those attachments and making sure that they get to the right place. Stronger processes for access and sharing. And I mentioned the A word before, so audit, and making sure that we have an audit activity around those processes and controls to make sure that they are reviewed and that uplift is prioritised. Increasing the need for documentation. It's not just privacy policies. We need data handling procedures and breach response plans. And those plans need to be rehearsed and reviewed so that if something does go wrong, what happens and how we act almost becomes second nature to the organisation, underpinned by those organisational values. And finally, staff awareness becomes critical. So most risks come, as I said, from everyday behaviour and not malicious intent. So it's that rehearsal, it's training, and it's having those key controls in place. And often we hear the words, we'll fix the governance later, and right now we just need to deliver services, which is completely understandable. But the tension here is that the more impact you have, the more data you hold. And the more data you hold, the more risk you carry. And so with regulators, there is an increasing position to say, we understand your constraints, but we still expect you to manage the risk. So looking forward, there are a few key challenges on the horizon. There's a risk around AI risk and governance, so staff using tools like ChatGPT or Copilot, and sensitive data being entered into external platforms. A lack of clarity on how outputs are generated, and that's really coupled with increasing regulatory scrutiny. So we want more proactive enforcement, public accountability, and greater expectation of maturity. Additionally, then we have the challenge of unstructured data, and that's a big one. For a lot of organisations, unstructured data has been sitting around for a long time, and the most risk really sits in emails. Emails are a largely ungoverned space, and a lot of attachments come in on emails that we don't necessarily have the right controls around. But additionally, we have things like documents just in shared drives, case notes and file shares that aren't in your core systems. So we don't have the right access and ability to govern that content. The minute you throw an AI over the top of that, that then becomes potentially exposed to the business, causing data leak and other issues there. But then additionally, and I don't think this is unique to the not-for-profit sector, but I think a lot of organisations struggle with it, and not-for-profit in particular. There are resource constraints. You're expected to do more with limited funding and capacity, which means you need to be targeted and pragmatic rather than perfect. I think we've covered off practical actions, so I'll leave you with this. In the not-for-profit sector, data is not just an asset, it's a reflection of the people that you serve. And how you manage that data is increasingly how you'll be judged, not just by regulators, but by your communities, your funders, and your future partners. So the question is no longer, do we need to worry about privacy and AI? The question is, how do we use data and AI responsibly to build trust and amplify our impact? And so, as I mentioned before, we've got Margot on the call, and I'll hand to her now to talk about how AI tools, including Copilot, are transforming the landscape. Thanks, Margot.
Thanks, Julie, for spending time talking about data compliance, regulations, and how non-for-profit are managing it. Very, very interesting. There's actually another key driver accelerating the need for strong data governance, and you would have guessed that it's AI. And I think for non-for-profit especially, like, AI couldn't come at a better time. Like, we all know the challenges in the sector. My customer reported on a recurring basis, and it might be similar for you. It's about stretched teams, it's about high staff turnover, admin overload, pulling people away from mission work, but also disconnected systems that eat up hours, and finally growing pressure from donors and regulators for transparency and accountability. These ones are not new problems, but I really genuinely think that AI gives us a new way to tackle them. And that's why we believe that this is a mission-defining moment. What I mean with this is, like, with the right AI tools, AI can reduce system sprawl, simplify work, and all of this ending up in freeing up time and energy for the work that truly matters. So you might wonder, actually, how big is this and how much energy starting AI in my organization would be, because you already have some systems and you cannot afford to start something from scratch. And this is what I think is great. We really want to help our customers to build on what they have. So if we look at Microsoft's Copilot and agent tools, it's directly integrated into your daily workflow. It's supporting either frontline workers or fundraiser with experiences that actually adapt to their individual roles. And critically, all of these tools come with built-in compliance and security, so you can modernize actually how you deliver your mission without compromising the trust your stakeholder place in you. And we're going to see that. So what actually does it look like in practice? That's going to be the next slide. So I don't know when the next slide is landing for you, but what I want to say is, like, at the heart of this is our AI platform. So maybe you already know about M365 Copilot or Copilot Chat or Copilot Studio, which are 3 tools that meet actually your teams where they already work. So first of all, Julie mentioned, for example, Copilot or ChatGPT or other tools. We have something happening at the moment is that there's a lot of shadow IT, and most of our customers, is getting less and less now, but some of our customers are not across the fact that if they are Microsoft customers, they can benefit from Copilot Chat, which is a free and safe AI chat grounded in the web that you can use in your organization. So just leverage that. This is already included in your license. And then you have Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is an AI built for work, which is consistent for you as an end user because it knows you, it knows your habits, it is grounded in your work data, so it can help you to achieve your work in all of your M365 apps, whether you're in Outlook, whether you are in PowerPoint, Excel, Word, etc. So what we see is that rather than bouncing between disconnected systems, your staff can actually draft content, summarize meetings, generate insights, and route tasks using natural language. And what I want to say here about natural language is that it is the thing that makes all difference, because you no longer need technical skills to actually interact with AI, right? So it makes it more accessible to anyone, any business user. And additionally, they can just use their preferred interaction mode. So maybe they prefer to type it, maybe they prefer to dictate, maybe they prefer voice chats with AI, which is pretty good also in terms of diversity and inclusion. There are also pre-built agents like researcher or analyst that is turning your data into insights, or now even Copilot Cowork, which is relying on Claude. But there's also a lot of power in custom agents that you can create for your organization's specific needs. So it means that you can actually build process-specific agents and think about your internal processes, think about volunteer onboarding, donor follow-up, program reporting, intake approvals, all of these things. And the beauty of it is that you don't need to know how to code or develop. These tools are really designed for the end users, like program managers who just want their thing to work, for example. Very important, though, to enable the user with the right change management piece. And I'm pretty sure Wayne will discuss that a bit later. So let me show you very tangible examples of what you can ask Copilot to do. That's going to be next slide. Thank you. So I love this slide because it makes the abstract very concrete. These are just 10 real prompts you can try already today. I won't highlight all of them, just maybe one of my favorite, which is about scheduling meetings through Copilot in Outlook. When you want to reach out to many people, you need to check all calendars, and that can be just a nightmare. You just need to tell Copilot who, when, what topic, and then it will handle all the rest. So it's pretty good. So yeah, use that slide. You can just keep it snippets and feel free to use it. And let us know also in the chat if there's anything that's been wow you in the latest weeks. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide to actually see what happens when organizations actually adopt these tools, because we are seeing measurable results. So first of all, and I think this is very compelling, teams are reclaiming hours every week. I had a conversation with one of my aged care customer a few weeks ago that was reporting to me that their employee with a M365 Copilot license save between 2 hours and 2 days of work per week. So that's just awesome. And what we love in that is that time goes straight back to mission work. We're also seeing less burnouts and better retention when staff have AI support to tailor their role, which is pretty good. And here is the number that really gets my attention, and I'm pretty sure it does get yours too. For every dollar spent on AI, organizations are seeing a return on investment of $3.70, and this is US dollar, for the first 14 months. And that's not a projection, that's from an IDC study. So for non-for-profits operating on tight budgets, I just want to say that return investment is transformative. Now, Julie has covered the broader data security landscape. Let me connect that to how Microsoft specifically built trust into those tools. So Microsoft is built on trust. Like this slide is simple, but it's foundational. Like it's for commitment. There is more. One of them that actually doesn't appear on that slide, but is very important, is that we build our AI products based on what we call a responsible AI framework, to make this AI responsible and following like 6 of our main principles. One of the biggest principles I wanted to share here today is actually that your data is your data, full stop. Like, I mean, the second one and the third one are really close to that. Your data is not used to train or enrich foundational AI models. This is absolutely key. And your data and AI models are protected at every step. So by default, this is your data. This is considered by Microsoft as your data and being confidential. So this is protected. And the last one is actually the customer copyright commitment, which means Microsoft will protect and legally support customers if they are accused of copyright issues for using Copilot or Microsoft AI intended. And again, for non-for-profit, where you have either customer data, case file data, donor data, beneficiary information, this is not just nice words, it's contractual guarantees. And this is what makes it safe also to move with your AI adoption. Now let's have a little dive in why is data security at stake. Because I've mentioned in the intro that, compliance and data governance is highly at stake for non-for-profits, but also AI is actually accelerating that conversation and helping you also meet those requirements. The reason why is that because AI tools are only as good as the data they sit on. When you actually introduce AI to your workflows, it naturally shines a light on your data. And I think Julie mentioned that. So it's showing actually how it's structured, who has access to that, and how it flows. And well, that's actually a good thing and opportunity, right? Because again, nothing changed with AI. It's just like easier to see this. So the good news is that you don't need perfect data to get started with Copilot or with AI in general. You just need to be intentional about it to implement maybe first the basic guardrails to start. So you can start small in terms of the data that Copilot or the AI can access. And as you improve your data foundation, AI can then become more powerful because it has more things to be fed with. And yeah, I think you can really think about this as a virtual circle. Better data enable better AI, and AI help you to actually manage your data more effectively. Yeah, I just wanted to share a few numbers with you on that slide, because when we talk to non-for-profit leaders about generative AI, there's 3 concerns that comes consistently. The first one is data sharing and leaks. So the majority of the leaders said it was their main concern, and they worry about like that AI tools might surface content with like incorrect permissions, making sensitive files easier to find than they should be. And this is like happening within your organization, right? The second one is actually identifying risky AI use, where 37% of security leaders said that they were detecting anomalous user activity as a top priority. It means that if someone suddenly starts interacting with a large volume of sensitive data through AI, you need to know. And the last one is actually governance and risk visibility. Again, most of the leaders we've been asking are already developing strategies to identify and prioritize data exposure risk. And they want to see what's happening in prompts and responses and actually ensure it aligns with organization policies, AI policies, etc. And those ones are actually legitimate concern. And this is exactly why Microsoft has built a specific tools to address each one. Let me show you in the next slide. And just the time that the slide is loading, like, again, I want to reemphasize AI. With AI, nothing changed about your data estate. It's just like bringing your estate to light and probably accelerating that data governance piece for you to also meet your regulatory and compliance requirements. Okay, so we've built tools to actually secure and help you having the best AI experience meeting your requirement and compliance requirements. So we provide actually a comprehensive toolkit, which we call Microsoft Peer View, across 3 pillars, which are securing, with addressing oversharing, and also governing. It really helps you like stopping oversharing by making sure who have access to what, identifying and labeling your sensitive data to keep it safe, and stay compliant by automatically protecting content and logging every Copilot interaction so that you can always audit it in the future. All of this actually helping you, again, meeting your requirements. So just maybe, I'm not going to go into details, and I think Wayne's gonna bring all of this to life, but just maybe a word for the conclusion. This is not about choosing between innovation and security. There is the right tools. You can embrace AI confidently. You can reclaim time for your mission work, and you have amazing partners like BDO to help you doing this. So I'll hand it over to Wayne because he's going to walk you through a real BDO and Microsoft collaboration case study for one of our common customers. So thank you, everyone, and any question, let us know.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Margot. So much to talk about there. And let's go to the next slide, please, because I'd like to introduce you to a global not-for-profit organization that we did some work with. They understood that their organization could use artificial intelligence in order to drive mission expansion, bring down costs, help them to have tighter operations, and get more capability for the same money or less that they were spending on operations. Now, earlier, Julie talked about knowing where your sensitive data is. And she mentioned, you know, having Z drives out there or dirty long-term repositories. And that's been the experience that we see with a lot of organizations, including not-for-profits. You go out and you find data that's been sitting around for years in this digital dusty corner. Margot also said something important a few minutes ago. She said, your AI tools are only as good as your data. And that's a simple but powerful statement. And we actually saw the truth of that with this client, because before they could get to realizing some of the things they wanted to do with AI, and we'll talk about what some of those use cases are here in a minute, they recognized that to get to those cases, the AI had to have the right fuel to get them to the right outcome. And that comes from the way that the data is made available, the way that the data is used, which meant for this particular organization, before they could do work on models or worry about whether they should be using X tool or Y tool or anything else, they actually had to work through consolidating their data, recognizing where stale data is in the organization, and really get to this place where they understood where data was authoritative, and then use that well-rationalized data store in order to feed well-structured AI applications, and then to bring out other productivity use cases that could tolerate unstructured data that may include stale information. So there's a lot for an organization to accomplish. And let's go to the next slide, please. A little bit of a pause. There we go. So in a not-for-profit, one of the interesting things here is in an organization, it can often be easy to make a business decision about, are we going to go on the AI journey? Margot said a few minutes ago that for every $1 on AI, organizations are seeing an ROI of $3.70 within 14 months of deployment. And you get there by focusing on critical use cases that have the most impact and realize value quickly. And in an NFP, that value is not always, like in the corporate world, it would be about profitability. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're here for the reason of a mission. There's something we're trying to accomplish. It might be more educational resources in the classroom. It may be delivering services to indigenous peoples. It could be, delivering water to drought-stricken areas or relief organizations. There's so many missions out there, and they're really important. And so the focus has to be on defining, even very early on in these kinds of projects, how does this effort relate to the mission? And I bring this up because we've run into some conversations, and we did it this client, where there's the potential for distraction. And the distraction starts with this conversation of, well, what are our objectives with AI? And almost starting like AI is something else. There's what we did yesterday, and then there's this new AI effort that we're spinning up. That's not true. The mission for AI is the same as your mission for everything else in the organization. And so we want to make sure that as we're tackling these AI projects, it's with mission focus. What are we trying to accomplish? How do we empower the team to get to those mission outcomes? And then what is the context that we have to operate in that allow us to preserve market trust, trust with our government and non-governmental partners, and trust with our donors? Next slide, please. All right. With this organization, one of the things that we've found very helpful is having a repeatable approach to these types of AI projects. Yes, there are many moving parts. We're finding that every organization is somewhere different on the journey. And I would add on top of that, that we're seeing that most organizations that we work with are multimodal, meaning that you may have one lane of traffic that is trying to go light speed into the distance, maybe serving donors with event information or communications. And then you might have other use cases in the organization. Same experts, same available technology capabilities, but they're rolling along more slowly. They may not be as ready. And so by having a consistent approach, you can serve both of those audiences. And it starts with educating your organization. There are going to be people who are power users. There are people that have a higher propensity to do kind of innovative things. And then there are people that they're just coming in and they're working on the mission every day and they have a specific role and you don't want to disturb that role. So everybody gets a base level of education on kind of the AI age that we're entered in and how to do reasonably safe things. And then you identify audiences, especially the ones that will be impactful in helping you find those use cases in the organization, and you make a special investment with them. Once you've made that initial investment, it gives you a base of people, that core that you can build around to start having those important conversations about where is our artificial intelligence initiative going? We have the mission. That mission is why we're here. How does AI potentially move that mission forward? Where are the places in the organization where we've said, if only we could solve, or what if we did this, right? And some of those ideas are going to be fantastic, and they're going to be not realizable. Some of them are going to be much closer to reality. But you have to do a little bit of rationalization, and that's where the strategy comes in. How do we make the decision of what acceptable risk is, and how do we set the reasonable guidelines that any kind of AI strategy has to meet, or any kind of AI technology implementation has to meet, in order for us to be willing to invest in it and move forward with it? That puts you in a place, once you've defined that envelope, that's one of those, what puts you in the place for the next step, which is laying the foundation. Margot said something else important. She said that users no longer need to have expertise to create content because they can rely on the AI to do that. She's absolutely right. And by putting the investment in the right foundation for this organization, it was about data. It was about recognizing what authoritative data is, how to clean it up, how to identify stale data so that that doesn't dirty the application. And then it was making sure, especially with this being a global organization, making sure that they had the correct measures in place from the start when it comes to things like privacy, so that they're not coming back after the fact and having to clean up something that may already have become an incident. Instead, it's there in the requirements, it's there in the sanction platforms. The reasonable guide rails are already implemented in the tools the organization has available. That gets you to a place that you can start working with some of those use cases. And there's a couple pieces to that. There's a technical piece that you're kind of building on top of that foundation. But there's a second piece that I think is really important, and it's easy to overlook. And that's preparing your people for workflow change. Just because you go out and create a new AI thing that's intended to solve a problem, you're not going to get a return out of those AI experiments. They end up remaining science projects if you miss one critical step. And that's identifying and making people able to change workflow to get value out of that AI thing that you've created, whether it's better understanding your donors, or it's better selecting people who can be served with mission resources, or it's navigating supply chain issues for the resources that are needed for the mission. Like, whatever that AI that you're creating is, there are people who are doing those functions today. You didn't just create AI and it creates a whole new thing we've got to do in the mission. Instead, that AI's got to get plugged into something that we're doing. And the people have to be the ones that are making that rotation. How do I save time with this tool? How do I get better effectiveness with this tool? How do I recognize if I'm getting better effectiveness with this tool? That all comes from preparing and investing in your people. And finally, go and grow. This is an iterative process. AI is moving extremely quickly. And I already mentioned the ROI statistics that Margot brought up earlier on the call. You get that kind of astronomical AI return on investment by focusing on critical use cases first that have the most impact and can realize value quickly. Then you come back and you go through this process again, and you're taking down more complicated scenarios, which are aided in part because the technology is moving very quickly, which can offer you more and more tools when you get into those more complicated use cases. Next slide, please. So what did this journey actually look like for this organization? This is taken almost literally from one of the presentations that we worked on with them. And you know, in their particular use case, there were certain agents that needed to be built. There was data engineering work that had to happen, but you'll notice that there are some things that are not technical at all here. The business case, the reviewing governance policies, those guide rails, those rules of the road are critically important to make sure that you don't get to panic moments. We're seeing organizations miss some of the foundations by trying to skip straight to technology. And when you do that, what happens is oftentimes you'll get a pilot, you'll get a proof of concept. That'll get greenlit off of enthusiasm. And then you run into this situation where somebody asks it the wrong question or feeds it the wrong file. And that typically puts a stop to things. And hopefully it's not an incident. It's just, hey, look, we did some testing and we're not really comfortable with this thing. So the more work that you're doing up front to do some of these things alongside that technology decision-making and implementation, the more successful you're going to be at keeping momentum with the organization. I also want to point out developing the business case and the roadmap is a critical situation, which brings up the next slide. One of the most important things that we did with this organization was not necessarily the technical wiring and bits. Yeah, we can do that. But even before you get to that place, the question of what are the most valuable things for my not-for-profit to go out and do, what is most critical to our mission, there's a couple of dimensions here. One of those dimensions is, what is the level of effort that is required to do this particular task today? How much resource is it consuming for my organization? And then there's this idea of, in this case, it was Copilot, right? There are many different AI tools that are available to us now, but when we look at the capabilities that are available in Copilot Studio, which of these scenarios are most adjacent to the capabilities of the tools? The things that are easy for us to identify and have a high impact to the organization, those are the things that we need to get out first. Why? Because a lot of organizations are stopping at pilot. And they're stopping at pilot because they look at the AI tool and they say, oh, you know, that's a really interesting science project, but where am I actually saving money or time or speeding things up? And so you have to focus on those use cases that really prove out in the most optimal scenario. High impact, high adjacency, high momentum. That's high readiness to move forward. You take down a couple of those, it builds experience and confidence in the organization, and then you start to take things that are high value with higher complexity, and then you go into things as you get down the value stack, and you start making decisions about whether something really is worth investing with AI. But most organizations aren't at that point yet. They've got way more use cases than they have time for. So you really have to prioritize where you're putting your time and attention in order to serve those strategic mission priorities. Next slide, please. One final note on this particular organization. We've talked about it a few times. Data and systems and interacting with different audiences that we have that surround our mission. This organization had many different systems, and those many systems all have very important business information in them, things that affect donations, donor management, being able to provide and care for that donor experience, while also being able to do the conservation-oriented mission that this particular organization had. Nobody's going to come back to a forest somewhere and ask the forest how it was served. So you don't have those typical indicators. Instead, each project has success criteria, and that success criteria is in a bunch of different information. Some of them are files, some of them have kind of formal project definitions. Some of these things are stored in all kinds of different systems. So we really had to help them get, and this goes back to that 5-step plan, right? Get the foundation, step number 3. That was by far the most critical investment for this organization in order to unlock the rest of the value of AI that we could help them with behind it. Because once we identified the integration potential for each of their data stores, we could start to make decisions on what is close enough and most important for those most important use cases that we identified. Bring the two things together, most important use case, high adjacency to AI tools with good integration and data that we can feed it. If I can bring those three things together, I can prove out the value, I can start delivering advantage for the organization, and then I can go on and I can do the next project. AI is not one monolithic project. It's a planning and strategy session that helps you set the guide rails, and then it's an iterative project where you take down one use case at a time. And as you do that, each step of the way, you help move the mission along. Next slide, please. I will hand it back over to Julie.
Thanks so much, Wayne. That was awesome and great to listen to. So we just wanted to take a moment to touch on how BDO supports organisations and particularly not-for-profit organisations in activating that end-to-end Microsoft and AI capability safely and pragmatically. So this slide for us is a bit of that plan on a page in terms of how we can assist. So we really start with discovery and assessment, and I think me, Margot and Wayne have all touched on that today, helping you to really understand where value sits and what data you can trust and where current risk exists today. So making sure that you really understand that current state and where the guardrails need to be put in place. From there, our strategy and roadmap translates that into prioritised defensible initiatives aligned to business outcomes. And as Wayne's mentioned, that step is really critical so that you have that direction and that guidance. A critical differentiator for us at BDO is our depth in safety, security and data governance. And we really look to embed security, privacy and compliance considerations up front, particularly for AI and Copilot scenarios. But that's not exclusive to Copilot. It could be really any technology, but any sort of Gen AI scenarios, rather than retrofitting controls later. And if you like, that's why we started with that compliance piece this morning. We then move into data management and model development, so ensuring your data foundations are sound and that AI use cases are designed responsibly and are fit for purpose. And as Wayne mentioned, really starting to chip away at that larger journey. It's not a big bang approach. And finally, we provide ongoing monitoring and optimization, so solutions can remain compliant, they perform well and are scalable over time. And it's that monitoring piece, I think, that a lot of organisations are missing still at the moment. The achievement is, let's get AI deployed and let's have a solution within our organisation. And so it's just coming back to make sure that it's working as expected, and things like drift and bias are being caught early rather than later. Importantly, all of this can be activated via some of our solutions offered in the Microsoft Marketplace, and we have a number of offerings from Gen AI accelerators and Copilot readiness through to purview-driven compliance solutions, underpinned by BDO's Microsoft partner designations across Azure, data, AI security and modern work. So very excited to work with you if there's an opportunity there, and please do reach out if there's a discussion that you'd like to have. I'll hand back to Elizabeth at this point to help work through any questions that we can cover off in the last sort of 5 or 6 minutes of the session. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thanks, Julie, and also a huge thanks to Margot and Wayne. That was very interesting. I'll ask Margot and Wayne to also come back on the screen. We've only got 5 minutes and we've had a large number of questions come through, so I'll try to get through as many as possible. Julie, while I've got you here, I might just ask the first question. Just in your presentation, you talked about AI and privacy, which is so important, and talked about regulations as well. Do you see regulators such as the ACNC and APRA start enforcing certification compliance against these regulations for governing AI tools like Copilot in the workplace?
There's nothing enforceable yet, but it wouldn't shock me if that's sort of where we went. Certainly, a lot of the signals from the guidance provided by the Australian government is starting to build sort of framework around that. So it would be, I think, a wise move in the future if we started to move in that direction.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Margot, in a mission-driven organisation, there can also be concerns about the broader issues such as the environmental impact of AI, and that LLMs are built on stolen data. What are your thoughts on this, and how can NFPs respond to these concerns?
Sorry, I was muted. Completely understand that concern, and this is something that is also very important for Microsoft. We've taken some commitments actually to reduce our environmental footprint and make sure that we actually deliver in regards to this consideration too. So I would be more than happy to share a bit more about the sustainability reports and all the plans to make sure that we can actually promote a sustainable AI growth. But indeed, very, very important to us.
Great. Wayne, great case study. Thanks so much for sharing. Question that arose was that this was a large global not-for-profit organisation that you were discussing. Is it worth investing in the use of AI for a small organisation if they don't have the money to fund infrastructure and resources to enable advanced analytics and intuitive systems?
Yeah, I think absolutely it is. There's a difference between creating some complicated AI system where, you need to have statistical analysis and data scientists and everything else on staff, right? There are a small number of organizations that are going to do that kind of work. For many of our organizations, maybe the first use cases to take down in your organization are asking questions about where admin time goes, right? We're all trying to get down that admin expense ratio. So if we can find places where we're bleeding that time, and then we can consume productivity-oriented tools, pre-built tools like Copilot integrated into M365, right? Maybe that's the first step for the organization, which allows you to build confidence, build exposure while you're planning and thinking about more intensive applications that you might implement in Azure with other technologies.
Thanks. I'll stay with you, Wayne, because this is a great question that everybody's asking, is will AI take over my job in the accounting space in the future? And if so, how?
It's funny that you bring that up because I'm a technologist at heart, still spin the propeller pretty hard. I wrote my first program before I entered elementary school. I've been consulting professionally for more than 20 years. I've written programs in 12 languages. And in the AI age, none of that matters. None of it. Because AI really does bring an equalization in knowledge that allows teams to accelerate. And so the question isn't, will my job get replaced? It's how do I use AI so that I can be more effective, more efficient? I despise doing development work, but AI gives me the ability to take that stuff that really is not my particular area of focus. Instead, give it high-level requirements, bring my expertise as an experienced architect and executive to the table, and then help us accelerate towards programs, progress, reports, whatever the thing is at the moment. And it helps me be a better leader to my team, helps me be a better servant to my clients. And throughout the accounting discipline, it's going to be the same thing.
Great. Thanks, Wayne. And Margot, while we have you, I might just finish on the last question here because we are out of time. But just really high level, can you provide some information regarding the differences between Copilot Chat and Microsoft 365 Copilot and the data security over the two products?
Yeah, so we could spend an hour on this, but I'll be very brief. The Copilot chat that we actually name now Copilot Basic is an experience that is available for everyone in your organization that already have a Microsoft license, whether they are a frontliner or a back of the house. And in this, you have that web-grounded chat that is still secured. This chat, you will have access also to the same one with the M365 Copilot license. So that's the same security. So that's very similar. But with the full license, you have access to way broader things. And one of the main differences is going to be like the grounding. So your Copilot is actually grounded in all of your work data, which is very different than just the web, right? Because it better understands who you are, what you do, and which are the documents you are working with and what you want to achieve. So the grounding is very different. And then there's like all the different features that you have access with M365 Copilot, whether it's like in-app to help you doing your work, or agents, or create tab to create images. Like there's so many things to say here. But, in regards to the data security, well, maybe you want to have a look at when your Copilot is grounded in your own data. You want to make sure people have access to the right information. And as I said, like that there's no oversharing, or maybe that you want to exclude sensitive data to be read by Copilot. So all things can be looked at before you want to start. And again, you don't need to have like your data governance perfectly ready to start. You can start small, just choosing like, for example, a few SharePoints you wanna start with, and then little by little work on your data governance estate.
Thanks, Margot. And I am pleased to share that we are going to have a number of thought leadership pieces that we're going to be publishing over the coming months on AI and data privacy and Copilot, specifically for the not-for-profit sector. So I know we didn't have time to answer all of your questions in today's webinar because a number of additional questions did come through. But we will have, a series of articles that we will be publishing, and we'll include the questions that people have raised today in those articles and publications. So I'd like to just a huge thank you to our presenters, Julie, Margot, and Wayne. And in addition to Leon Fouche, who is a partner in and the leader of BDO's cybersecurity team. Leon has put all of this together, so a huge thanks to Leon for organising this and the presenters for today. Please follow our Insights page and subscribe to our Insights page, as well as follow BDO in Australia on LinkedIn, where we will be publishing all of these articles specifically for not-for-profit organisations. Also on our website, you will see previous articles that we have published. There has been a large number over payday super, payroll compliance, technology, all specifically for the not-for-profit industry group. So please, as I mentioned, subscribe to our link, and that is when you receive the slides, you will be able to click on the link, and in addition, follow BDO in Australia on LinkedIn. And we have gone a few minutes over time, but thank you so much for attending today's webinar, and thank you to the speakers for all of your insights. It's incredible, and it's really interesting and exciting to see the changes that are occurring. So yeah, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.